As you all know, we've spoken about this several times. Over the past year, we've learned more from social scientists and experts about how social media is affecting and impacting our kids, and the links between social media and the high rates of anxiety, depression, and self-harm that we're seeing in children and teens. What we've learned is sobering and startling. Excessive social media use has been linked to sleep problems, attention problems, and feelings of exclusion among teenagers. Teens who spent more than 3 hours per day on social media, which, by the way, is almost all of them, face double the risk of experiencing poor mental health outcomes. Nearly half of teens ages 13 to 17 said using social media makes them feel worse. Almost 60% of teenage girls say they've been contacted by a stranger on social media platforms in ways that make them feel uncomfortable, and more than 60% of teens are regularly exposed to hate-based content. Now, this led Utah in a direction of putting social media companies on notice that the harms to children need to stop. We've signed landmark legislation requiring social media companies to prioritize children's safety over profits. Again, I want to thank our legislators who have been so engaged in this and leading the nation when it comes to legislation that protects our teens. In addition, we've launched a full-scale public awareness campaign about the destructive effects of social media, which you can find at socialharms.utah.gov. But there is much more to do. As we've said previously, we will be using our existing laws where appropriate to hold social media companies accountable for the harms caused to our children and youth. Today, we are doing just that. Earlier this morning, the state of Utah filed a lawsuit against TikTok after a lengthy and ongoing investigation. Attorney General Reyes will go into more detail about the lawsuit, which seeks to hold TikTok accountable for its misrepresentations regarding the safety of its platform for children, the harms of its addictive algorithms, and its misrepresentations about its enmeshments with ByteDance. Make no mistake that Utah will continue to lead out to protect children from the harms of social media. And this is not a partisan issue. From the President of the United States to members of Congress to the U.S. Surgeon General to experts across the country, more and more every day are recognizing the negative impact social media is having on our children. We will not stand by while these companies fail to take adequate, meaningful action to protect our children. We will prevail in holding social media companies accountable by any means necessary. I want to thank again the Attorney General Reyes and his team for their great work. I want to thank Margaret Bussey and the Department of Commerce and her team for their incredible work on this issue as well. The state's outside counsel, Edelson PC, and many others for their diligence in crafting such a persuasive case against TikTok. With that, Attorney General Reyes, the microphone is now yours to outline the legal arguments. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As my friend Governor Cox explained, today marks an important moment in Utah's continued work of protecting children who use social media. This new lawsuit is the result of an ongoing investigation launched over a year ago. Our complaint alleges TikTok has violated both the trust of Utahns and multiple provisions of Utah's Consumer Sales Practices Act. Utah's trust has been breached. Our children have been harmed, and that harm is pervasive as nearly all teenagers engage in social media. We seek injunctive relief to force TikTok to change its destructive behavior and fines and penalties, we hope, to fund education, mitigation, and reparation of damage to Utah kids. Now, what's the first major concern in our complaint? TikTok's algorithm intentionally creates an addiction that unconscionably targets our kids. TikTok designed and deploys an algorithm and features that spoon-feed kids endless, highly curated content from which our children struggle to disengage. TikTok designed these features to mimic a cruel slot machine that hooks kids' attention and does not let them go. Even worse, TikTok has trained its computer program to continuously learn how to better manipulate our kids, to stay on the app for too long, and to return to the app as often as possible. Most adults can't resist this. Our kids stand no chance. Our lawsuit targets TikTok's own actions and their designs, so no Section 230 defense applies here. The second focus of the complaint, safety and lies. While it targets and manipulates kids, TikTok has lied to parents to create a false sense of security. They've marketed to parents that the app is a safe haven for kids. What is the lie specifically? The company says it takes proactive steps to moderate content, conduct age verification, and mitigate harms to kids. Now that all sounds great, but what is the truth? The company allows disturbing content and dangerous challenges to reach our children without taking adequate steps to limit or stop them. Indeed, TikTok knows the detriments posed by excessive use. In fact, everyone, including the U.S. Surgeon General, knows this. But TikTok only encouraged increased engagement among even the youngest of its users. Utah has not escaped this harm. Crazy challenges on TikTok have resulted in serious bodily harm and other trauma to Utah youth. Children have been exposed to and contacted by predators on the app. Our state has seen an alarming trend of worsening mental health among our teens. And the third basis for our complaint, TikTok's lies about its own structure. TikTok has lied about who is ultimately in control of its business operations. Earlier this year, many of us saw TikTok's CEO in Congress testify that the company's China-based parent, ByteDance, did not control or influence the company's operations. As explained in our complaint, for myriad reasons, this is objectively false. The risk of harm from these lies to the people of Utah is not hypothetical. The company is siphoning large amounts of personal data from our kids every time they use the platform. And if parents of our state knew this truth, we believe many would make alternative choices about whether to let their children use the app. Our efforts demand accountability from TikTok. Our efforts to demand accountability did not start yesterday, and they will not end tomorrow. We will continue to combat the company's many efforts to obstruct and slow down our ongoing investigation. Next week in the 3rd District Court, we look forward to demanding that TikTok comply with investigative subpoenas issued long ago and which have been repeatedly ignored. This lawsuit sends a message of warning to other social media platforms. We are not stopping our efforts. Our investigation into TikTok and other companies continues. And now that I've covered the legal side, I want to summarize my concerns, trying not to be too redundant of what Governor Cox already covered. Many of you know the battles and successes the state of Utah has had fighting opioid manufacturers and distributors. To me, social media and opioids share many destructive commonalities. Like opioids, we've been lied to. What TikTok releases into our homes was marketed as being safe, but is highly addictive. It is very dangerous to our kids and extremely profitable to the company. TikTok has become the Purdue Pharma of the technology world. Now, I come from a tech background, so I know innovation can lessen suffering and better our lives. Sadly, TikTok has leveraged its tech to do just the opposite when it comes to America's children. On multiple levels, TikTok is endangering the health, safety, and development of our youth. Over the past year, our investigation has uncovered that TikTok has knowingly enticed innocent and impressionable children into a vortex of catastrophic online dangers. It is an immediate and unrelenting threat we felt must be met with a swift and bold response. Hopefully, this lawsuit will not only change behaviors at TikTok, but give hope to concerned and frustrated parents and liberate some of the many children caught in a cycle of addiction and diminished health and safety. In conclusion, my top priority is protecting our children in Utah. TikTok tells parents its app is safe and is happy to talk about safeguards. I'm tired of talk. I believe Governor Cox is tired of talk. We're tired of TikTok lying to parents. We're tired of our kids losing their innocence and even their lives addicted to the dark side of social media. So, once again, this lawsuit is our escalation of a battle for the hearts and minds of our sons and daughters. We have a compelling case against TikTok. Our kids are absolutely worth the fight. Thank you, Governor Cox. Thank you, Director Bussey, Director Haas, for you and your teams at the Department of Commerce and the Division of Consumer Protection for your collaboration with my Solicitor General, Melissa Holyoke, our AAG, Doug Crapo, and the rest of my team in our joint efforts to empower Utah parents and protect Utah children. The deception, Ben, is what we're focused on. It's promising parents that they're taking measures to protect our kids, not following up on those measures and doing the opposite. In fact, employing devices and designs of their own creation, we're not talking about others, to lure and keep our children hooked to their product and service while they monetize it a number of different ways. That's the crux of one of the deceptions. The other deception is not being forthright about who actually controls and governs the operations of TikTok. Now, we believe that their actions are unconscionable, so under the statute, that's one of the basis. The deception is there, and the harm is immeasurable. Governor Cox covered it very well, and we could have both gone on for a lot longer about the damage. Get TikTok to actually do what they claim that they're trying to do, or to do more even than what they've proposed. That is, in essence, what we really want them to do. We want them to step up, be accountable, take responsibility for their actions, acknowledge who's really at the helm at TikTok, and then focus and work with parents, work with the state, help give actual teeth to these measures that we've taken. We can pass laws, but if the private sector companies that are exploiting our children aren't cooperating with us, then those laws are very difficult to enforce. TikTok, as I mentioned, is not cooperating with even the investigative subpoenas that we sent many, many months ago. So we'll see. Ben, one of the reasons we filed the lawsuit is to catch their attention and say we're, again, tired of talking about things. We're tired of proposals and promises. We want to see real results and real action. We don't feel TikTok will step up to the plate until they're put at legal risk. So they have to be at risk. And at risk is where they've put our children, where they've placed them, in exchange for profit and greed for too many years. That's a great question, Ben. We believe that ByteDance effectively controls TikTok, even though there may be a facade of differentiation within the corporate structure. We know that they're monetizing information about our children. They've already acknowledged that. They've paid fines in the U.S. and abroad. Where the information all goes exactly, I don't know yet, Ben. It's part of our ongoing investigation. Could be, Ben. That's again what we're trying to get to the bottom of, which is why we need a lawsuit, because apparently the administrative subpoenas have not been sufficient to compel their cooperation. We're definitely looking at all social media platforms that could potentially be harming our youth. The governor feels strongly that way. I think he and I both announced that when we stood together here earlier in the year. So without naming specific names right now, we are looking at any and all potential targets. Rich, let me just say this. I'm not aware of being named in any complaint. I believe a civil complaint was filed, as you said, against Mr. Ballard Operation Underground Railroad and perhaps other defendants. I haven't had a chance to review that in depth. We were focused on the TikTok complaint all the way through last night and into the early hours of the morning.
Did your office receive complaints about Did your office receive complaints?
We're not aware of any complaints that our office received, and we'll answer a number of questions. I think our office is going to issue a statement to try to address other questions. We've answered many from the media already. The statement could come today, tomorrow, but we'll address a number of issues that are still being asked about that. One thing I do want to say, because I think they're fair questions, is these allegations, which I believe are serious and ought to be taken seriously, I hope they don't in any way diminish the resolve that we have as a community, as a state, definitely in my office, to continue to attack the issue of human trafficking. Hope it doesn't diminish the urgency that many of us feel to combat what I think is a very real crime that affects real people in the state of Utah. It is a crime that preys on the most vulnerable amongst us. And again, going back to the most vulnerable, I think our children in the state of Utah are most vulnerable. It's why we filed our lawsuit against TikTok. And if there are any more questions about TikTok, I'm happy to field them right now. There are lots of possibilities. TikTok could end up paying a number of fines and penalties for their conduct, but money isn't the primary purpose for this change, and having TikTok actually put guardrails and safeguards that they enforce and don't just talk about in place to protect our children, that is the ultimate focus and goal of what the governor and I both desire from the lawsuit. Yeah. So.
I think I agree with what the Attorney General said. Ultimately, what we want is to seriously get the attention of these companies. I'm glad the Attorney General brought up the opioid settlements. Sadly, it took multi-billion-dollar settlements to get the attention of these mega corporations to do the right thing, and to start being honest about their products and putting real safeguards in place. That's really what we're trying to accomplish here. Again, not just with TikTok, but with every social media company. They have the ability right now, the technology exists to create accounts for our kids without violating privacy, without causing any harm, without any First Amendment violations. They can create products that don't get our kids addicted, that don't expose them to harmful materials at very little cost to them. But the problem is right now there's no cost to them to keep doing what they're doing. And so unless and until we impose a severe cost on them as a society, they're going to keep doing this. I'm still shocked by some of the pushback. There's very little pushback on this, but it does come from certain corners. People that are willfully ignoring the death and destruction that is happening, especially among our kids. Let's be honest, it's happening among adults too. There's no question it's happening among adults. But our focus right now is on young people whose brains are not fully developed. And these companies are very well of what they're doing. And so we believe this is the first. We believe that other states will follow, as we're seeing that there will be, over time, people will begin to wake up to what's happening around us. We'll look back on this and deeply regret that we didn't do this sooner. It's one of my regrets that we didn't do this 4 or 5 years ago. But the second best time to do it is today. And that's why we filed today. Sure. Yes. Yeah, I certainly hope. I certainly hope it is. Well, again, the tobacco lawsuits and the opioid lawsuits were not just to get money out of them, Ben. Again, it's the language they respond to. Uh, it, it, Giving money caused them to change their marketing practices, caused them to change the way they develop their products. And so this is not trying to get a windfall for the state. Although when we do, we can use that to try to correct some of the damage. The reasons the court awarded those, and the reason those settlements took place were because of damage that had been done to people because of deception and lies. The tobacco companies knew their products were harming people, and they hid that research. The opioid companies knew that their products were addicted, and they hid that research and pretended they weren't. The social media companies know that their products are addictive and causing harm, and we've had leaks from some of them where they knew this, and they've tried to hide the research. And so there are absolutely parallels, and if that means, if the only way we can get their attention is that they end up paying billions of dollars to correct some of the damage they've done, it doesn't bring back our kids, it doesn't bring back their innocence, but it's certainly better than nothing, and nothing is what we're getting from them so far, just platitudes and lies. I don't know that we have an exact estimate of that. I don't know if anybody on your team is. Melissa, please.
No, but we have engaged outside counsel on a contingency basis, so we expect that some of the proceeds from this litigation would pay for that. But of course, there is the resources, no upfront costs, apart from the resources of the Attorney General's office that we're doing right now, and the Consumer Protection Division.
Yeah, great. It's a great question. Yeah, please. Yeah.
This is a really complicated case, obviously, and as we've seen across the nation, these are complicated cases, very intensive resources regarding resources and what is necessary here. But we also, when we issued the RFP for outside counsel, it was to look not just at TikTok, but other potential targets, and to really explore all potential litigation and challenges that we can bring, and legal challenges we could bring against these companies.
Yeah, but I think it's important to note that with the two cases you mentioned before, with opioids and with big tobacco, a similar pattern was followed. These are huge, and I think you have to understand too the resources that are on the other side of this. We're talking now about some of the largest corporations in the world. They certainly have armies of attorneys that they will be using, and so we have some of the best attorneys in the world right here in the Attorney General's office. But they have their hands full with lots of other work that's happening here, and for something this big, we're going to need some outside help as well.